Hello and welcome back to Toasty Broken Opinions. This is the podcast about anything and everything. Today, we're doing Doctor Who, which is why Danny's not here, because he's not a fan of Doctor Who, which is a bit weird because it's the first time I'm doing a TBO or TBSOLO by myself. So let's get into it. So this is Doctor Who Season 1. The first one was Ncuti Gatwa. And it had a lot of high expectations this season because it was the first season back for Russell T Davies, with also returning Stephen Moffat as well as a guest writer. So a lot of people who sort of dipped out of Doctor Who from sort of the Jodie Whittaker or sort of after the David Tennant era sort of come back in and now given their opinions. And it seems that this season has been very controversial. There's been I've seen a lot of hate on the internet for this season. I don't think all of it has been entirely justified. There's definitely some stuff which I think is getting overly hated, and we'll get into it why I think why. So for this episode, I'm going to go through each episode one by one and sort of give my thoughts on what I thought about it when it came out. So I'm going to start off talking about the Christmas episode, because on Disney, since they have the official streaming rights, they actually classed Church of Ruby Road as episode 1. And to be honest, as the plot lines go along, I think it does make sense to talk about that one first. So I love this episode as a Christmas episode. I think it's a really good return for the Christmas theme. We've not had one since Peter Capaldi left because Chris Chibnall didn't like doing Christmas episodes, and it feels very much like a Christmas episode. You know, very, very tongue-in-cheek, exactly what you would come to expect for a Doctor Who episode coming out at Christmas. And I would probably say that, you know, this is actually one of my more enjoyed Christmas episodes. I quite enjoyed the Goblin song as well. I thought that was quite fun, low intro. The whole Ruby Sunday looking for our mother, no one can figure it out, like building this plot for the whole season going forward. Very good suspense building, really engaging. First time we've seen Ncuti Gatwa, you could definitely see what he's sort of about and sort of his core, you know, what his character and his sort of opinions are. The magic rope was quite cool. The goblins looked very weird. I'm not sure if it was all CGI or there were some practical effects. Not quite sure. We also get to see that scene of the church at the beginning where the Doctor goes back in time and what happens as well if Ruby was never adopted. Very, you know, on par with Doctor Who, I would say. Nothing to complain about in particular. I also love the Christmas carol that goes along with Ruby. And throughout the whole of the season, there's that Ruby Sunday Christmas theme. So I really enjoy sort of having that. You know, there's actually a raw emotion to the character, it feels. And I think it's just a good start for the 15th Doctor tenure with Ncuti Gatwa. I can't really remember too much from it. It was a while ago since I watched it. I've not watched it since Christmas. But yeah, so moving on from that, we went on to Space Babies. Now, this is the first kind of jumping on point for most people, and I would say this is probably the worst season opener there's ever been of the show, and that's including the Jodie Whittaker era. Even she had like fairly decent openings with Spyfall, The Woman Who Fell to Earth. Even the first Flux episode, there's a lot more going on, and it led better for the season. I think the difference though between the Jodie Whittaker ones and this one, even though the season opener was pretty crap on this episode, it got better. The season definitely got better, and I think having a really poor season opener has really affected the show in more ways than one. I have seen a lot of people say this episode was very childish as well. I can kind of see that. I mean, it's kind of the vibe of the show. It definitely didn't really feel like classic Doctor Who. Having the enemy as the bogeyman, and there's a line the Doctor said, which was, there are no such thing as monsters, just creatures not met yet. Well, I don't buy that line. There definitely are monsters. I mean, even towards the end of the show, it's clear these are monsters, right? They, you know, have bad interests at heart, and by the very definition of the word, they are monsters. So I didn't really love that. Also, the plot, I didn't buy it. It wasn't right. Having the whole place run by space babies is an idea, I guess, but it just seems really stupid, to be honest. I don't know why they thought of that idea as the writers, but Sometimes ideas just don't pay off, and you can have a good idea, or you think it's a good idea, and then no one else likes it. And I think that's what's happened here. And I don't think Shooty or Millie have done like a bad job in terms of the acting. I think they did well what they were given with this episode, but it wasn't great. And also the homeworld thing, and it wasn't really fleshed out properly. There wasn't that much explanation happening. And I'm always a great fan of, not giving a whole bunch of exposition and actually showing what's happening. But that wasn't really done either. And then this whole plot point behind creating the monster was that it was actually the children who created them, with the actual snot, the bogeyman, because that's what the children needed, or what in the situation. Once again, it's not great writing for our first episode. I think this episode would have been fine if it was mid-season. And I think it'd be one of those ones that'd just be kind of forgettable. Like, okay, it's a bit crap, but it's just like Doctor Who normally. And I think also people are hating on this probably too much than they should be. I mean, yes, it is a fairly crap episode, Doctor Who. But when people think of the classic episodes, they don't remember the bad ones. People tend to remember the Doomsdays, the Bad Wolves, the Doctor Dances, 11th Hour, Big Bang, whatever. But those ones are the good ones, but there are some really crap episodes like in the past. Some of you are so forgettable. There's like the werewolf one where the Doctor shoots like the silver bullet thing. That's what happened. I forget that episode already. It was so forgettable. Also, Gridlock was also not a great episode either. Like there's a lot of just bad episodes out there that were just really mid or forgettable. So I think in the day of streaming now, where it's so critical to have a good show, and comparing it to back then, where you could have these dull episodes and it didn't matter, it weighs the series down a lot. And also considering this is only 8 episode season, it's the shortest season apart from the Flux season, which does not count that because that's technically a continuous story. It's just one of the shortest seasons, and that is, I think it's really hurt this season having only 8 episodes. Doctor Who really needs those 10, 13 episodes, just because there are these kind of episodes that are a bit more flat, and you never have a season really that's all good episodes. You may have some that none are bad, and maybe some mid and some are great, but you need more episodes so you can make room. And having this as one of the 8 episodes and as a season opener, I think is a really detrimental thing. They could have done a lot better. And yeah, I think everything just really felt out of place. This did not feel like a Doctor Who episode, generally. And I think that's their biggest problem. But they revealed 2 episodes on the same day, because they also had The Devil's Cord come out. Now, this one I felt was definitely stronger, and it still had mixed reactions, definitely. But I think this was a lot better episode. And for the starters, I would say the biggest thing for me was the villain. This villain, the Maestro, it had such a good personality to it. There was something so unique that I've never seen in Doctor Who before. Okay, yes, maybe it was a little bit campish, or people didn't quite like the vibe. From my point of view, it's much better to have something that is unique and memorable than boring and just forgettable. So having this as the villain, also I love the episode being about music, her being the god of music, or it being the god of music, makes it such a brilliant idea. I do think it was slightly poorly executed. There was definitely a few things in this episode that didn't feel quite right. And I know a lot of people on this episode, they were quite let down because they thought of it as the Beatles episode. I fortunately didn't know much about it. So going into the season as a whole, I didn't really know anything about it other than those 8 episodes, really. So going in, I didn't have any sort of pre-emotional attachments or pre-expectations to the Beatles being in it. I can see if you thought this would be a Beatles episode, then, or if it was hinted at being a Beatles episode, how you can very easily be disappointed. Since there wasn't really much for them to do, they had the bit of the ending, but that was kind of it. I mean, the whole plot of the episode, apart from that, was quite a cool premise of seeing the world without music, and instead it's just like these crappy little jingles or something. I think that's such a cool idea to see, because music, once again, I love listening to music, and I really enjoy even like the classical pieces or like orchestral music, and I love feeling the emotion behind like the notes and beats, and it's so strong and raw emotions, and getting rid of that and just seeing what Maestro wants to do, just remove like enjoyment out of life through music. It's such a cool idea. Now, there were definitely some fairly bad things to do with this, and I would say the CGI with the music notes or the Doctor being captured. Don't get me wrong, I'm fine with things being campy, but it did feel a little bit off. I felt like there could have been a better way of doing things. I mean, Doctor Who's always had dodgy CGI. That's nothing new. But yeah, I didn't quite like that vibe, if I'm completely honest. Also, yeah, the fight between Maestro and the Doctor towards the end, that was I really enjoyed that. I thought that was really cool. Them seeing doing different musical instruments, just vibing off each other, like the Doctor trying to prove that you can defeat Maestro with music. I thought was just brilliant. And I also did kind of like the Beatles in the end that sort of saved the day with the two music notes. I mean, I wish they did it in a better way. I mean, they could have just actually, I think a good way of doing it would have been, instead of just playing some notes, they just picked up a guitar and then just started singing, and it just proved that Maestro's power weakened, and just doing that just was able to undo everything she had done. The other cool thing I liked was like just Ruby doing the music on the piano at the rooftop. I thought that was really cool. The Doctor using the sonic to sort of hide sound. Once again, a really cool idea. Love the idea. Actual sonic doing audio abilities. Also, I think it's really good that it only worked once, because if that was using multiple times, it would have been just too easy to do things. But I guess that's always a problem with Doctor Who, is that the sonic is very powerful for what it is. There's a lot of things that it can do, and it's hard as a writer to sort of tread in between using these devices that are realistic, like a magic wand that can probably do anything, but not being able to make it do anything because that'd be too easy for the show. So I think, making it work one time is a cool idea. The biggest problem, though, with this episode is probably the musical number at the end. I know a lot of people really hated it. I didn't really care too much for it. I mean, I didn't hate it. I just thought, it is there, it's a thing. But having that as, the ending, it didn't feel right. As in, like, it just felt too odd to have everyone singing and dancing. If they want to do a musical number at the end, do some music as a music episode, I would have said it'd have been much better if they had it much more low-key, and they could have just had the Doctor and Ruby just singing, or just having the Beatles playing the music, Sarah playing her music, just doing a lot more things, a lot more subtle, and just enjoying the music. That would have been a much more powerful thing, I think, and also a little bit more on par with Doctor Who. I understand they wanted to do this musical number, and having God of Music is a good opportunity, but it seems that it's two ideas that were executed or shouldn't have been executed together. If they wanted to have a whole musical episode, they should have lent into that more. And instead of having the Maestro removing of the music, it needed to be something else to have them do a big musical number. For example, make an everyone talking music or something stupid like that, right? That would have made more sense to have a musical number. But to have everyone doing it at the end, and also, I think the Doctor doing the winking or whatever, it just didn't feel right, okay? And having the fourth wall break, I may be wrong, I don't think it belongs in Doctor Who. I think it definitely takes something away from the show. It makes it feel like it is less real. And I think that's a good thing for Doctor Who, is how real the emotions feel, the monsters. Even if there's bad CGI, the emotions felt by the characters can feel genuinely real, like the terror. And I think that was missing from that ending. But apart from that, I would say it was a fairly solid episode. I don't think it deserved the hate it got. It's just average, I would say. It's probably still better than most of the Whittaker era for me. I really did enjoy the Whittaker era, and this is definitely, a much more good improvement. Following that, though, we had the third episode, or fourth if you want to look at the Disney release schedule, which was Boom. And this was my most anticipated episode because I knew Stephen Moffat was writing it. And I saw the synopsis beforehand of it's just the Doctor stuck on a landmine and can't do anything. And I loved this episode so much. It was brilliant. And there's so many good moments. I love the fact it was just condensed into one area. The Doctor couldn't move. He had to do everything just by using his voice and using himself to just be the Doctor. Stop a war from whilst being on a landmine and save the world. It's such a brilliant premise. I love it so much. And to be honest, this episode, it felt very Moffat. I still watched Doctor Who around season 5, and Matt Smith was my first Doctor. And I can say this definitely felt like it belonged in season 5 sort of vibes. Just the Doctor vibes. It was like the capitalism also comment as well. That's, the actual political side of things done well. I know Doctor Who has been criticised in the past for being too politically correct or being too political, but the truth is Doctor Who has always been political. That's never not been the thing of the show. It what makes it great. The trouble was with the Whittaker era, it was shoved down people's throats and it was not done in a tasteful way. Like the Orphan 55 episode where it's just shoved down your throat to be more environmental, it's not a good way of doing things. It's a horrible way of doing things. Because it takes things away from the show. Instead of actually feeling like an enjoyable show, it makes you think, oh yeah, maybe I should, be a bit more better. It makes you just think you're getting a lecture from someone saying, oh, you're shit, do something better. It's not any good. So I think having this Doctor here, and I want to keep comparing it to the Whittaker because I saw a video on YouTube comparing this episode to Clipchamp because it's a very similar storyline where it's an AI gone rogue and is trying to kill people. The difference is how the Doctor reacts. During the Whittaker run, she blames the humans for using the AI and saying they shouldn't be using it and that they're doing everything wrong. But to be honest, the AI is at fault here, and it's not the people, it's the companies, and it's the AI itself. And the Doctor for this one understands that in Boom, that is. And it goes after the AI. It doesn't go after the soldiers. It doesn't blame the soldiers for fighting each other. Like they're just do what they're told to do. It's not their fault. And he goes after the AI, and rightfully so. And he's going after the Vanguard. Very, very well done. And I love the speech, the Doctor's speech. Very, very Moffat once again. I love how eerie this was as well. You can also see the actual fear in Ncuti's face. Like, he portrays the Doctor so well in this episode. Does such a good job. And I would definitely say that, this is my favourite episode of season 1. I think we're going to call it, and the rebranding. I really hope we get to see more of Moffat's writing. I think he's very good at doing one-off Doctor episodes. I know some people have felt that it didn't look quite like the episode. It may have been a bit boring in the sense of it was nothing really changed. It was only one setting. But I really liked that. It felt very grounded. And I would definitely say this is the best episode of Doctor Who since World Enough in Time in Peter Capaldi's last run. Also, the dad as well. He played a key part in the role. I love the style of the ambulance when it's, it does everything sort of money-wise. If it's worth basically saving a human's life. That's such a interesting premise to see how an AI would work if it was designed to make money. And you can see that is what the business is. That's what the Vanguard is. All they are in for, they don't care about human life. They fight all sides of the war. They just want to make money. And having an AI evaluate saying, even if a person's blind, they're not worth enough to keep them in the battlefield, which is a horrendous thing to think about, but it's also very sort of realistic in terms of wars. And a lot of the time, the people who start the wars, they don't die in the battle. They control the war and they send a lot of people off to get killed. There's wars going on nowadays, still now, with world leaders, and it's happened throughout history, and it's always happens. Where, and the Doctor's had this before. It had a very similar speech, and it was the Zygon invasion with Peter Capaldi. Another great speech. The Doctor's very good at conveying the war messages. And I think they definitely did do this in the sense of, because of war, of what's happening at the moment. There's a lot of wars going on. And it did just feel really good that, having this in place. So this was definitely a very Doctor Who episode. From here, I felt, yes, this is what we've been missing for the past 5 years since Capaldi. And I was excited for what went next. And then the next episode was a Dr. Light episode of 73 Yards. And this was probably, these 3 episodes I'm about to talk about, Boom, 73 Yards, and Dark Bubble, those are probably my 3 favourite episodes as a whole. I really enjoyed all these 3 episodes, all for different reasons. 73 Yards I felt like Turn Left. It's very similar to Turn Left, a very similar premise of what if the Doctor just didn't exist, just fell out of existence, essentially. And having, the Doctor just disappear randomly, this sort of suspense is building. I thought it was really captivating, holding the attention of myself when watching this. Just watching Ruby kind of descend into sort of madness herself, trying to figure out what's going on. And having this woman always 73 yards away, just always appearing, and the audience hasn't got a clue what's happening, who's happening. Is the Doctor going to return? It's never revealed. Yeah, and honestly, it's such a cool episode. I think Millie Gibson did such a good job portraying Ruby here. And actually, even as she got older, got a job in a political office, and it just felt so good. Even like the unit, she got Kate Lethbridge Stewart to help, and her mother. All of them just started to hate Ruby as soon as they saw this creature. And I love that we never actually find out what this creature is or why it happened. Now, we do know from the ending that there is Ruby to an extent, but it still doesn't explain why did the people run away and never see her again. And I do hope one day that it's sort of explained. And I think this was what led on to believe that maybe Ruby is something else. She's not human, but that obviously doesn't play out as the ending of the show suggests. Yeah, and I love it's Mad Jack, and she's able to basically stop a nuclear holocaust from just basically moving 73 yards away from Mad Jack. And I do wonder if that's something to do with the show. I've seen a thought that it may have been to do with when the Doctor stood on the thing, or when Millie, I keep getting confused with the names. When Ruby stepped on the fairy circle, she released Mad Jack, and then she was then stuck in an endless loop of Mad Jack existing. And the only way she could break that loop was to basically stop Mad Jack and then stop herself from standing on the fairy circle. It's a very cool idea in theory, but it doesn't really explain how she time traveled in the first place. And yeah, I think that's pretty much all I've got to say about that episode, really. It's a really good and a really good setting. I love how people look at the creature, then look at Ruby, then run away. I think it's very interesting, like a very, very cool premise once again. I just wonder why it's happening. And I love that it's left to everyone else to figure out. But moving on to the fifth episode, with Dot and Bubble. Now, this was a second Doctor Light episode in a row, and I wasn't really... I think it's really not... It's not great to have two Doctor Light episodes in a row. But I did some reading, and it turns out this was caused because of Shooty Katwa had problems with shooting. And he had a problem with because he was running Sex Education season 4 at the same time. So there's very limited screen time for him to do things, which makes sense of why it was two Doctor Light episodes in a row. I think next season would definitely be better to see more of him. But I love the setting of Fine Time. I think it's really cool. These really pastel colours, these people who are so arrogant. It's such an interesting concept because this is Black Mirror, right? This is what a Black Mirror episode really is. I find it interesting though that this episode concept actually came out before Black Mirror, because this was actually meant to be a episode that was around Matt Smith's tenure, but they refused to do it due to the sort of CGI effects wasn't available to do the bubble. I'm grateful because that bubble I think looks very good. And I would say for the whole this season you can see the Disney money becoming involved. There's definitely a lot more money there. I also think the monsters were brilliant, and sort of how it seems that they just didn't move. They just waited for people to walk into them, and it always seemed that to be these targeted attacks, and it was a great mystery behind it, working it out. I think Lindy was like a great character, but she's clearly an awful person. Very one-dimensional, but I think that was what was intended. And it was definitely clear to see how bad she was. She was awful person, not even worth saving. Genuinely terrible. I like I said, and yeah, you get to the point where, Ricky September. She finds Ricky September, the Doctor's guiding her. She's unable to walk as well because of the bubble, and a lot of people criticize this online, saying how could you not walk? And then someone actually explained the reason why they could not work is probably because the bubble, when it's moving on your head, it disorientates your vision and it disorientates how you move. So you have to have the bubble up so she's able to move. And then by the time that, I think she probably learns how to walk without the bubble. So that kind of actually does make sense in retrospect. But the thing is, the Doctor reveals that they're killing the animals. Sorry, the slugs are killing them in order A to Z, which kind of, that's fine. But then the bubble, they learn that it's actually the dots killing them. But then it's the slugs killing them. And then the dot, because there's no slugs where Lindy is, the dot tries to kill Lindy. But then that kind of defeats the point of the slugs. Because then if everyone's got a dot, why doesn't each other's dots kill them? And that's not really explained. There's also not really explained why would they just kill each person A to Z really slowly. Now, we see this clip of the homeworld and the slugs are there as well. And then it seems like the slugs have eaten everyone on the homeworld. But it's never really explained. And I think that's the biggest hindrance behind this, is that none of that is really explained properly. And it's a really, really crap way of just saying, oh, yes, A to Z. What would have been better from this, is my point of view, is if you had a longer season. I would have probably made this a 2-part episode, and I would have had the Doctor and... I probably even had the Doctor on the homeworld, and then the Ruby actually entering Fine Time. I think that would have been a much cooler idea, because they could have had it as the Doctor can't enter Fine Time for an unknown reason, likely because he's a Time Lord, or they think it's because he's a Time Lord. And then having Ruby being able to enter it, then help Lindy with the dot and bubble, and then the Doctor learning sort of why people are going missing is to do with this, and it's to do with the slugs got in or whatever. That could have been a such more cooler premise. And then even after the reveal at the end, because there's the twist at the end, and I love the twist at the end, it's such good. I really didn't see it coming, and I definitely seen a lot of people online, because I'm not part of any minority groups, but people who have been part of minority groups saw online saying, yes, she was very obviously racist, and having that, you know, it really opened my mind to things like how I was unaware of someone being that blatantly racist. I always thought I would be able to tell, but I wasn't. And it really opened my mind and sort of how thinking about like how to identify people and stuff. But the biggest thing I love about this was, even though Lindy was an awful person, she killed Ricky September. She only was in it for herself the whole time. She was absolutely awful with the Doctor. She's completely racist. The Doctor still tries to save her, because that's what the Doctor is. The Doctor always tries to save somebody. And she just outright refuses because of her stubbornness and this discrimination towards the Doctor, just because of his skin colour. The Doctor just yells out and screams because he wants to save them. He wants to, and he knows they're going to certain death. And he can't do anything because they're too stubborn. And I think it's brilliant. It's such good writing. It's so well done. And I want to compare it to Orphan 55 again, where Jodie Whittaker's Doctor decides to just openly kill people without any remorse. And the Doctor's doing this, knowing what the type of people are, even if they're bad people, still wants to save people to all costs. Is so good, so in character. I think it's just absolutely brilliant. And yeah, I would say it's a very solid episode. Following that, though, we had Rogue. Now, this was finally not a Doctor Light episode. And the remaining 3 episodes were all a lot more Doctor heavy, which is good. I will say, though, I didn't really like Rogue in the sense of I didn't find it that engaging for me. The thing is, I think this is a lot more, as I said, a lot more Bridgerton, but that's not really my kind of vibe for shows. I didn't really find it that interesting, if I'm completely honest. I love the love interest for the Doctor. I think that's a really cool idea. And it felt very much like A Girl in a Fireplace, very similar. I would still say Girl in a Fireplace is probably better in just the way of how the love interest sort of passes on. And I think having that is, you know, the Girl in a Fireplace one was done a lot better, especially with the creatures and stuff as well. But that being said, I think this was still, you know, it's fairly average. I wouldn't say it's particularly bad. It just, once again, wasn't for me, and I think it was kind of forgettable. I think the monsters were kind of cool with the shape-shifting. Now, of course, shape-shifting is not a unique idea, since, you know, it's been done in like Marvel with Skrulls, or even in Doctor Who before with the Slitheen, that they kind of do a sense of shape-shifting to an extent of wearing human skins. And then it seems these creatures, they just electrify people and can adapt themselves to them. And that's, you know, like nothing really new. I think the interesting part about it, though, is they do it all for cosplay reasons, which is such a cool concept, I think. I've not seen that before. I'm not saying it's not been done before, but I've just not seen it. And I think their design, like the bird-like design, was fairly cool as well. Also with Ruby being able to sort of defend against themselves, not knowing who and what was these bird-like creatures. I don't remember the name of the creatures. Yeah, and I think the highlight of this episode was the Doctor talking to Rogue and sort of their interactions. Apart from that, I would say the rest of the episode was very, very mid. Nothing too memorable. But once again, this is kind of what Doctor Who is. I don't think Doctor Who needs to have every episode be an amazing episode. It's not that kind of show. It's a different kind of show. It's not like the Boys coming out or like Umbrella Academy. It's not like anything near, or even Game of Thrones. It's not like those kind of shows. It's a different kind of show. It's kind of more similar to a Black Mirror, where you don't need to have every episode be brilliant. You can have these mid episodes and still have a great season. Like these mid episodes isn't what makes a season good or bad. And I think that's an important thing to remember about Doctor Who. And people seem to, I think people have forgotten that based on our current environment of shows and stuff coming out. So yeah, I don't have much to say about the Rogue episode as a whole. I love some of the set designs, like the Bridgerton theme. Like I said, I'm happy. I'm welcoming of the concept. Just wasn't my kind of episode. Now we go on to the first episode of the 2-part finale of The Legend of Ruby Sunday. And first off, I want to say I am so grateful for them to return to the 2-episode format. It's definitely been a miss in sort of past seasons, and I think every season of Doctor Who should always end in a 2-parter. The key thing for me for episodes is it needs to have, it needs to have a good starting episode and a good finale, and that's what makes a good season. If you've got a good story arc going through all of it, right from the beginning right to the end, that's what makes a good season. So yeah, this episode sees the Doctor going to UNIT to figure out who is Susan Twist. Now, throughout the whole season, and including the David Tennant special episodes, Susan Twist has been a part of all the episodes. That's been since the what's it called? The episode when they're at the end of the edge of the universe. And a lot of people were saying that, I'm going to spoil the reveal because everything knows Sutek is the main villain. Everyone thought Sutek may have come from that, being at the edge of the universe, being close to the void. I can definitely see that. I think the Doctor has been a few times there. He's been off the edge, and it seems that yes, that's what's happened. Is that Sutek was in the void, and then he clinged onto the TARDIS at some point, and then got through. So the Doctor goes to UNIT to figure out who Susan Twist is, but I don't quite understand in terms of this premise. Why is it taken so long? Because they're she's everywhere, but like why now? That doesn't really explain why. And I think there should have been a note in the episode beforehand to say, okay, no, this is something serious to lead into going into this episode. Not that that's a big thing; it's just a minor gripe with the episode. But moving on from that, we get to UNIT again. Kate Lethbridge to it. Always a welcome return. What I will say is, though, I think some of these UNIT characters were a bit annoying. I will be honest, like how they were portrayed. It is what it is. I felt like some of them just didn't quite feel in place. I love seeing. I don't remember her name, but I think it was Donna's daughter. I think she was one of the members in UNIT. I'm happy to see her there, and I think it was quite cool. I love that they were trying to figure out who Ruby's mother was. Once again, I don't quite know why now was the time they tried to do it. So the Doctor hints at using a time window, and then there's a funny joke of the Kate Lethbridge said, "You told us never to do that." And then the Doctor's like, "Well, no, you do have it." And she's like, "Oh yeah, it's down on the 4th floor." So I think that's quite cool. Once again, I'm happy UNIT to return. I think Chibnall got rid of UNIT, I think, during his era or something. There was a comment that said like they just basically disintegrated, disevolved or something. And so at the start of this episode, it had the VHS tape, and it gets taken to the time window, and they tried to figure out who Ruby's mother was, but no one can figure it out. And they noticed something else, that Ruby's mother, so no one can see her face. For some reason, they keep skipping past it. And then she points at the TARDIS, and then it's revealed that there's like this darkness cloud surrounding the TARDIS, and the UNIT soldier that's in the time window goes up to it. You can hear him talking, and it turns out he gets turned into sand. Anyway, they go on and they try to see Susan Triad. Now, the Doctor thinks Susan Triad might be his granddaughter Susan, because it's been so long since he's seen her, and there's nothing to say because of the same similar name, Susan. He thinks it may be, but it could also be a trap, and the Doctor's aware of this, so he's cautious. So we go to see Susan Triad, and then he realizes, no, it's not her. What I do love as well on this Susan Triad was that she's like a tech billionaire, and then she had her conference. And one of my favourite moments was when she does the dancing on stage, because that's clearly taking the piss out of Theresa May in the UK Parliament. So I just thought it was really funny. And yeah, I don't think too much really goes on other than, it's just, the reveal of Ruby and trying to figure out who Ruby is. Mrs. Flood looks after Ruby's grandmother, and it's clear to see now that Mrs. Flood is someone else that we're not sure of, because she mentioned something about the god of death returning. And from there, we see Ruby's mother tries to find her real mother as well. She gets unit clearance now. And there's the reveal that Susan Triad, and everyone thinks because S Triad is a anagram for TARDIS, that is to do with the TARDIS. But it turns out it's, as the Doctor says, it's the wrong anagram. And it's actually for Sutekh. And I love this reveal. The Harriet Harbinger as well, the Harbinger. I think that's the second time they've done this, and I hope they keep doing that for more gods. It does seem that they're going to be doing a lot more of the Pantheon throughout this Doctor's run, and the supernatural. I'm more happy to do with that. I think it's definitely got a place in the Doctor Who world. Some people, I think, complain because they think it should be more sci-fi. I don't. I think it's fine. Especially, the series has been going on for like 60 years at this point. There's nothing wrong with trying something new. And yeah, there's this whole thing about no one's able to see Ruby's mother. And this actually sort of leads on into the next episode. But yeah, so it's revealed Sutekh is the big villain. And Susan Triad is actually a worshipper of Sutekh, I guess you could say. And it turns out, yeah, she turns people into dust. The Harbinger as well is also another worshipper of Sutekh, and turns more people into dust as well. And that's kind of the end of the first episode. And I may have genericized that a little bit, but I'm trying to keep the podcast too short. I mean, I could be here all day talking about Doctor Who. I think it's a fairly decent episode. A good reveal. Probably one of the better first half episodes of Doctor Who. There's been a lot of two-parters, and usually, to be honest, how Doctor Who works is the first episode is brilliant, and then the second episode's a bit of a letdown. And to be honest, this is not the same case here. The second episode is definitely weaker than this episode. So, The Empire of Death, this is the one most recently, and I'm recording a day after watching it, so everything is still very new. And I think the biggest problem with this, and this is the same problem you get with every two-parter episode, when you have this situation, when you put Doctor in an impossible situation, hard to get out of, it's really hard to write him a way of getting out of it that doesn't undermine the whole episode. It's a really hard thing to do. And how this episode works is Sutekh is revealed, and it's revealed that Susan Triad's, or the Susan Twist character, is placed throughout history wherever the Doctor goes, and causing death and destruction all through space and time, basically causing the death of the whole universe. So from there, you see the Earth now turns to sand, the whole unit turns to sand, everything's in sand, everything is death, right? But the Doctor's able to get into unit headquarters with Mel and Ruby beforehand, with everyone else dead, and then Sutekh and the Doctor kind of confront each other, and it seems Sutekh is now in control of the TARDIS with Harbinger. Not quite sure how he's able to pilot the TARDIS. It's one of the biggest plot holes. My logic is because he's been part of the TARDIS for so long, maybe he just understands it. Anyway, the Sutekh starts going on about a monologue a little bit about being the Empire of Death, how he just wants to kill everything. The Doctor makes a point saying, why is he still alive? And it turns out it's to do with Ruby's mother. Because he was there when he met Ruby's mother, he's also curious to know who she is and why is she important. And so clearly, it's at this point, it feels like the Ruby's mother should be someone important. So then the Doctor and Ruby and Mel all escape and go into the memorized TARDIS, which I'm not quite sure how much I buy this as a whole, to be honest. But it seems a bit odd to have a memorized TARDIS and then it's just kind of existing, and then it kind of exists outside the time window. I mean, it's very Doctor Who, it's very sci-fi, it is what it is, and it's a memorized TARDIS. But I love the inside, the interior, that's all the old TARDISes, and it's got the whistle. And I also love the magic rope again being used from the first episode. It definitely feels like this is the tying of the whole season together, and I think that's a really good point. So then the doctor moves on and then goes to this woman to find a spoon. And then the spoon's able to stabilize the memorized TARDIS. Meanwhile, Mel is being turned to Sutek, which I guess I don't... None of it's really explained. And I think that's the biggest problem on this episode. And I think that's another reason why a lot of people hate it, is that these plot points, nothing's explained properly. And everything, I don't think is written too well on how to get out of the situation. I think the writers put the Doctor into a impossible situation, and the only way to get him out of it was essentially to write him out of it, instead of the Doctor naturally getting himself out of the situation. Because everything about it it almost seems kind of coincidental that Sutek could have easily have won. But anyway, yeah, so the universe is destroyed, and the Doctor realizes in the future, through DNA testing, he should be able to find Ruby's mother, because they see about Mad Jack. And also, I love the 73 yards hints, because obviously this version of Ruby never experienced the 73 yards, but clearly it's still there in her memory somewhere. So I love all that's all there. And we see Mad Jack again, like I said. And yeah, so they go forward and to 1946, where Mad Jack's elected, and get the DNA records. Also, the Doctor's now finds out that Mel's been turned. And following that, Sutek brings the Doctor and Ruby back into the present with the real TARDIS. So the fake TARDIS is now left behind, which means there's now another TARDIS just left behind somewhere again. Oh, there's now 3 TARDISes, there's be in the world, because there's the 14th Doctor's just there vibing somewhere. Anyway, so the Sutek's really interested, and he brings Ruby up towards him, and then Ruby drops the screen. Sutek thinks it's going to happen, and then the Ruby ties the magic rope to Sutek and drags him through the time vortex. And dragging him through the time vortex is basically killing death, and then killing death brings life, according to the Doctor. Once again, kind of convoluted plot, but it's kind of cool. And I think the best moment of this episode is the moment the Doctor realizes he has to kill Sutek. It's the only way to stop him. And the reason why I think this is so good, the Doctor has killed people in the past, it's very true. But it's not, if you ignore the Jodie Whittaker ones, of course, it's not often the Doctor has to pull the trigger. Because the Doctor doesn't want to pull the trigger. He may, at some points, choose not to save people. And especially after the Dawn Bubble episode, where the Doctor chose everything to basically save the worst people. But it's the Doctor knowing that Sutek is so bad, he's such a formidable villain. Anything he doesn't do that's not going to kill him, he'll try to destroy the universe again. There's no saving him. He's just a horrible creature, a horrible monster. And then the Doctor closes the door on him, and he dies in the time vortex. And I think that's a really emotional moment, and I think that was really good. Really, really well done. And I love that moment. I think Ncuti is a really good actor throughout all this, and obviously a great casting choice of the Doctor role. And then so we go back into normal time, and it turns out we find out Ruby's mother. And this is the most controversial point. Ruby's mother is just a normal woman who gave birth at 50 and gave her away. Now, a lot of people on the internet have really hated this. I didn't hate it as much. And the reason why I didn't hate it as much was, one, I didn't have any expectations, to be honest. I actually always thought it would be a normal person. I may be a minority here. And I guess me coming into that expectation meant I didn't hate it as much, or I didn't hate it at all. And it's the Doctor's thought was, everyone thinking that she was important made her important. And it was people giving her power that made her powerful. And then the mother wasn't inherently powerful. And I think that's a really good metaphor for the world in general, because we give power to politicians or world leaders. But realistically, they don't actually have any power. They're just normal humans like the rest of us. And I think that's what that's trying to convey. I think the trouble is, what they've done here is they've built up too much. They've given her such an important purpose to literally saving the universe. To make her just normal human doesn't really warrant this thing. I think if they wanted to go for this plot point of this metaphor, it would have been a lot better to sort of die down the importance of Ruby's mother. If Ruby's mother wasn't saving the universe, then it wouldn't be that vital. But I do love the moment that you get to meet her real mother. I think that's a really emotional moment. Really well done. And then, the Doctor says goodbye to Ruby. And what I will say is, though, we've not met her father. Now, her father may have been something else. I'm not going to stir speculation to say that he may have been a god or something. But the biggest thing I have a gripe with for all this is the snow. Because everywhere Ruby goes, it seems to snow. And if he's just a normal human, that doesn't make any sense. It can't be the case. It doesn't make... How? It's not explained. And yeah, that's my biggest problem with this. So yeah, that is pretty much the summary of all the episodes of this season of Doctor Who. So yeah, this season I have definitely enjoyed more than any of the Whittaker seasons. It's definitely been a lot better. But this season had a lot of hills to overclimb. It was trying to bring back the old fans and bring back the new fans, and trying to bring back even more like people new to the show. It was trying to do so much, and it had to be perfect for it to happen, and it needed to start strongly, and it didn't start strongly, and it's not been a perfect season. It's definitely been hiccups. This season, I wouldn't say it's been a misfire. I think it's just been an average season of Doctor Who. It's definitely not been the worst. I think it's better than season 7, better than the Whittaker seasons, probably better than season 8 for me as well. But I'd probably put it after that, really. Everything else has probably been a little bit better. And yeah, I think nostalgia still wears people's minds as well. People think the David Tennant eras was probably a lot better than it actually was. There was still these good moments and good episodes. I'm pretty sure when the Dr. Donna split first happened, people didn't enjoy that either. So like having these things, I think people will come to like this season more as time goes on. I've already seen that in sort of the IMDb score. It's been going up as more episodes have been going out. And yeah, I think it's a strong start to Ncuti Gatwa season. And it was definitely let down by there not being enough episodes. And the episodes we got probably weren't good enough to warrant an 8-episode season. But yeah, I think Ncuti and Millie have a really good chemistry. I think Millie is on for season 2 of Doctor Who. I know they're recording it right now. And I hope it improves, you know? And yeah, I think this season had a lot more hate than it deserves. And I think people should kind of take Doctor Who with a more pinch of salt. It's not a serious thing. It's a lot more jokey. It's a lot more campy, right? It's what it is. I personally understand that building hype to something that doesn't exist, it's not a great way of doing a show. But that being said, there's definitely a lot better ways of doing what was done. And I think I'm going to leave it with that. So if you made it this far, please let me know your opinions of the show down below, what you liked, what you didn't like. I'll read them in the comments section if you're on YouTube. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the TBSOLO for me as a change. And yeah, we'll leave it here and we'll catch you for the next episode. See you later.